In today's video, we're continuing Treated Like Trash, our investigation into the 2008 death of 20-year-old Amanda Wienckowski in Buffalo, New York. And today we're going to do something that we haven't wanted to do in the past. We're going to actually look at medical examiner's photos. Specifically, we're going to look at the right side of Amanda's jaw. Now, if looking at medical examiner's photos disturbs you or just isn't your thing, we suggest you go ahead and skip this video. Shortly after Amanda Wienckowski's body was found inside that Buffalo, New York garbage can by Officer Thomas Duffy, she was transported inside the can to the Erie County Medical Examiner's office, where she was carefully removed. The contents of the garbage can were also removed and cataloged. Amanda's body was frozen solid, so she needed to be thawed out. There's a proper procedure to follow to prepare a frozen body for examination. And this is standard procedure all throughout the nation. Basically, the body needs to be put into the cooler and slowly brought up to temperature just above freezing, usually around 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And this process can take about a week, sometimes two. The reason this is important is because if a body is just left out to thaw, microbes will begin to break down the outer tissues of the body while the center remains frozen. By bringing the body up to temperature slowly in the cooler, tissues remain intact and evidence can be collected properly. None of this standard procedure happened with Amanda Wienckowski. She was left in the examination room to thaw overnight. And when Dr. Verdes and her staff arrived the following morning at about 7:30 a.m., they began their investigation. When the examination began, Amanda's skin was bright red, and this coloration hid from view some of the most obvious signs of the struggle that Amanda surely went through as she was killed. The bruising on her neck, arms, legs, and torso was very faint, and there were wounds on Amanda's face and body that kind of blended into the color of the rest of her. In addition to that, her face was covered in blood, so facial wounds were almost completely hidden from view. There are two wounds in particular that Dr. Verdes noted in her examination report that I want to focus on today. In her report, she noted them as, quote, blue 1/8 inch contusions, 2 at angle of jaw on the right. And that was everything she said about them. The Erie County Medical Examiner's office had a photographer working before, during, and after the examination. So we have photographs from January 9th, 10th, 12th, and 14th. By the 14th, Amanda's body had been stored in the cold room for about 5 days, and so the color of her skin more closely matched the color of her skin when she was alive. When we take a look at the photos from the 14th, the two wounds that are noted in Dr. Verdes' report become much more visible. Fair warning, I'm going to show some photos of Amanda's face now, but I'm going to tightly crop them and blur some things out. And I'm going to do that because I don't want Amanda's mom to have to see her daughter in the state she was in. We do have her permission to show these photos. This photograph was taken on January 10th at 7:47 a.m. At this point in the examination, they were taking photographs and measurements. These are the two contusions, here and here, that I want to take a close look at. In this photo, they look like they could be rug burns, or may have been caused by being hit with something. But let's take a look at them after Amanda's face has been washed and she's been given some time to properly come up to temperature. Now we can see very clearly that these are two punctures. They both have a similar shape, though the one closest to her chin looks bigger. Now we do have photos from the second examination that are just too graphic to show here, but show that the bigger wound is actually two wounds, each of similar size and shape. So there are actually 3 puncture wounds on Amanda's jawline. It's as if there was an object that poked Amanda 2 times at once, and then one came off and it pivoted on one of its points, and the other poked her again, causing 3 punctures to her skin. There's more to look at, though. If we draw a line between those 3 main puncture wounds, there are 3 small marks running in a line perpendicular to the main wounds. Here, here, here. Then, if we look between and below the main puncture wounds, there's a significant bruise that's round in shape, but has these 3 small line-shaped bruises protruding out from the left side. So I'm just going to tell you straight out, I believe what we're looking at here is evidence that Amanda Wienckowski was hit with an electrical weapon, like one of those handheld stun guns. The 3 contusions, those puncture marks on her face, were caused when the electrodes of that stun gun were jabbed into her jaw. As she struggled, one of the electrodes broke contact with the skin but continued to arc, pop, 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 up her face, causing those 3 electrical wounds. The bruise underneath her jaw could have been caused either by the edge of that stun gun or by a ring being worn by the person who did this to her. I'd like to welcome Dr. Kenneth Clark to the program. Dr. Clark is a board-certified pathologist by the American Board of Pathology in forensic pathology, anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and neuropathology. He served as a forensic pathologist in the Onondaga County Medical Examiner's Office, as well as associate medical examiner in the Allegheny County Medical Examiner's Office. He's also served as an assistant professor of pathology and laboratory medicine at SUNY Upstate Medical University and as an adjunct professor of forensic science at Syracuse University. And if those aren't bona fides prior to your medical career and education, you also earned your Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering. So welcome back to the show, Kenny. Good to have you.
It's good to be here, Gavin. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. So what I wanted to talk to you today is about a conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago. I was asking you specifically about the 2 puncture wounds, is what I'm calling them, on Amanda Wienckowski's jawline. They're kind of right here, that appear to me to be like an electrical stun gun, kind of like somebody jabbed it into her face and turned on the stun gun.
Right.
Now, really, am I to understand that by looking at the photographs, there's really no way to kind of prove that based on the photography?
Yeah, correct. There's no way. A lot of different things, especially when you're talking post-mortem, a lot of different things can cause, wounds can have a general appearance, be it a bug bite, be it, as you're describing, something electrical. All you can say is really that there's a wound. Without looking at it under the microscope or knowing more details of the case, there's no way you can really ascertain what caused it.
So without some extra steps to investigate that, it would be appropriate to put on, the medical examiner's report that these are 2 1/8 inch, wounds on the face, right? Something like that.
Yes.
Okay. So if you were to, I guess, examine it more closely, how would you determine whether something is like a stun gun wound? What would you do to go about figuring that out?
Well, what I would do exclusively is I would start by taking a biopsy of the actual lesion itself. Lesion just means a focal abnormality. So I would take a biopsy, a small piece of the tissue that you think is the wound, make histologic slides out of it and look at it under the microscope. And the reason I would do that is in my career, I've seen one case of that I ruled as high voltage electrocution. It was an accident. That was the cause of death. And in that case, you don't often get to see this because electrocution injuries aren't something we commonly see. We actually took microscopic slides. We made microscopic slides of that tissue for examination. And one of the things you were able to see under the microscope is that in high voltage electrocutions, there are very predictable histologic changes. In other words, changes to the tissue that you see under the microscope that a striking contrast to what you normally see in non-electrocuted skin. So I would, if I had any suspicion that there was an electrocution element in that, I would definitely take a biopsy of the skin, look at it under the microscope.
Now, you said that you put together slides. So if you take a biopsy of that lesion, what is it that you do with, I guess, with that tissue to make the slides? I think you described that to us once before.
Yeah. It's a process that's done in a laboratory. It's not that I do anything with it, but essentially what happens is you take the tissue. You want to make the tissue such that you can cut just a few micron thick sections of the tissue, stain it with stains that highlight the tissue microscopically. And then but you want it thin enough that you can shine light through it and the light will go through and you can see it in a microscope. So in order to do that, what you got to do essentially is you have to dehydrate the tissue. First, you fix the tissue with formaldehyde. And formaldehyde, it cross-links, it basically fixes everything inside the cell, the proteins, the nucleic acids, things like that. Then you take the water out of it, you dehydrate the tissue, and you impregnate the tissue, if you will, with something like paraffin or wax to make it firm so you can actually cut the slides that you want. And then you put it on something called a microtome, which is it's a machine that will cut very extremely thin slices of this paraffin embedded tissue. And then you stain it with hematoxylin and eosin. There's a process involved. And then you put a cover slip on it and you throw it under the microscope.
So, I mean, it's a long process. I would imagine that you would really have to suspect that there was an electrocution event in order to do that. I mean, that's a long process, right?
Well, it is a long process, but in most histology labs, truth be told, is they're automated, semi-automated in their batch process. So to throw one extra cassette of tissue in is no big deal. The issue becomes, what we do, though, in pathology, it's what limits us is simply everything you put in to make a slide out of, you're kind of obligated to look at. So in the world of forensics, when there's no shortage of deaths and there's always work to be done, we don't routinely take sections of anything for examination that we don't really need to. So in the absence of a real need, in other words, if someone dies of a heart attack and we know that and the autopsy confirms it and the toxicology is negative, we're never going to take a skin biopsy because there's no point in doing it. It's not going to contribute anything. So in a case where, a skin finding might actually be contributory, significantly contributory, that's a case where I would probably take multiple biopsies.
Gotcha.
Just have them processed.
What are you looking for? Once you look under the microscope, what is it that you're looking for in an electrocution event that would be different than just looking at skin, that hadn't been electrocuted?
Right. Well, there are three features, and again, this is in my own experience. There are three features that are that will tell the story if there is a high voltage electrocution type of injury. One thing is that, as you know, electrical current generates heat, right? That's why you have breaker panels in the house. It's to prevent fire is what it's, over too much current will generate too much heat. And it's the same thing happens in the skin. Stands to reason that one of the things that happens if you run too much current through the skin, as you would see in a high voltage situation, and you generate enough heat, couple of things are going to happen. One is you're actually going to, whatever water's in the skin, you're actually going to boil it. What happens is the way the skin is, the architecture of the skin, you have a superficial layer, an external layer of the skin it's what makes the skin tough, right? It's why you can scratch your hand and it doesn't rub off. It's the wear and tear part of the skin. It's called the epidermis. Underneath the epidermis is what we call the dermis, and that's where you get your blood supply and a lot of things go on in the dermis. But those two, the epidermis and the dermis, are actually distinct histological layers. And when you get water boiling in the skin that I've seen in electrical injuries, what happens is those two layers essentially separate and lift off from one another. So you get these little, what appears to be small blisters directly underneath the epidermis. So that's one thing. The second thing that I've seen is there's a lot of connective tissue, structural tissue in the skin. And if there's enough current that runs through long enough, what I've seen is that connective tissue, that structural tissue actually will kind of meld together. It becomes very amorphous looking. In other words, it doesn't have this distinct look that you usually see in a skin biopsy. It looks like it's been melted together. Let's put it that way. And the third thing that I think is most striking and most telling is a lot of the proteins and nucleic acids, DNA, that are inside each cell, they're charged. They actually have an electrical charge to them. So you can imagine if you apply voltage of any kind, especially high voltage, to a piece of skin or any piece of tissue, and you let the current run, those proteins and nucleic acids are actually going to migrate. I mean, they're going to move. And the consequence of that histologically is that we see what I call nuclear streaming, where the nuclei in these cells, which have a very predictable look, a very usual look in a normal skin biopsy, these nuclei will start to stretch out, and they actually look like streaming, if you will, like blades of grass that are kind of getting blown in the same direction. So it's a combination of the amorphous looking connective tissue, the blistering, the subepidermal blistering, and the nuclear streaming. When I see those three things in the context of the right story, I would not hesitate to say that injury is due to electrical, too much voltage or too much current.
So there you have it. Evidence that Amanda Wienckowski was attacked with a stun gun prior to her death. Now, the only way we're going to know for sure is to exhume Amanda Wienckowski a second time and have that skin tested in the way that Dr. Clark described by a forensic pathologist. And all of that is going to be very expensive. When we asked Leslie if she was willing to do that, she didn't even blink. She wants to do it. So to help us raise funds to bring justice to Amanda, you can go to our website where you will find a special edition t-shirt, a Treated Like Trash t-shirt, that Leslie has authorized us to sell. The profits of which will go toward exhuming Amanda, having that skin tested, and proving that she was attacked with a stun gun. With this evidence, the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office cannot, in good conscience, ignore us anymore. So please help us. Head over to our website, buy the t-shirt, and help us bring justice to Amanda Wienckowski. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to my channel. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below.